the world would have us believe. You always get what you deserve. Well, if that were so, then we'd all end up in hell and there'd be no salvation. I know that we don't always get what we deserve. Though some people deserve what they get, which is somewhat different. And there he was, looking at Christ. And what I like about it is he comes to himself and he realizes he's got no strength. And there's nothing he can do to get off the cross. And he hears his friend casting mockings at Jesus. And if you look down with me, it says in verse 39, and one of the malefactors which were hanged railed on him, saying, If thou be like the Christ, save thyself and us. But the other, answering, rebuked him. Now suddenly there comes a change in the man who's next to Jesus. And he says to the other fellow, he says, Dost thou not fear God, seeing thou art in the same condemnation? He suddenly says to this other thief, he said, Look, aren't you afraid of God? Suddenly he's faced with the fact that eternity is staring him right in the face. Death is only minutes or maybe an hour away. And he realizes, can someone shut that door? I don't want that noise. He realizes that death is staring him in the face. And with that realization, he says to the other, don't you fear God? All he's concerned about is himself. Don't you fear God? Seeing thou art in the same condemnation, he acknowledges we're both condemned. And then he goes on to say something else. Firstly, he's got a fear of God, you'll notice. The second thing he has, and we indeed justly. Suddenly, he's given up making excuses. Have you found people, they've always got a good reason as to why they do things? This man gave them all up. He suddenly says, look, don't you fear God? We deserve what we're getting. We deserve hell. And until you come to the place of seeing that what you deserve is crucifixion, what you deserve is death, what you deserve is eternal separation from God, you won't get into God. This man suddenly came to the realization of it. He said, we deserve it. For we receive the due reward of our deeds. We're only getting our just deserts. But this man hath done nothing amiss. All the multitudes are crying out, mocking Jesus. Everyone's saying this man's a fraud, a cheat, a liar. This man's a blasphemer. And the thief who's nailed to the cross next to Jesus said, this man's done nothing amiss. How about that? And he spoke it out where everyone could hear him in public. He spoke it out so the chief priests who were riling and mocking could hear what he said. At one point he was a friend of the multitude. He was jeering as he died. Last breath was going to mock God and the Son of God. And he was going to be a friend of the multitude, if only for that short space of time. And suddenly there comes a turning around in him. And by some mystical method he realized he was going to meet his Maker. The first words he uttered are, don't you fear God? Who do you think told him? God. The Holy Ghost began to work on him. And you'll see there's a little progression in his life. Firstly, he says, don't you fear God. Then he says, look, I deserve this. In other words, he's come to a place where he's given up making excuses. He's given up trying to tell people that really it wasn't his fault. How many people do I meet who all the time when I try and deal with them, it's always their father or their mother or their great-grandfather or their great-grandmother or something that's caused them to be the way they are. And then it was their education, and then it was they didn't get much opportunity, and then it was this, and then it was that, and if only this had happened and that hadn't happened. And until you come to a place where you abandon all that, you see the total futility in it, and you say, okay, I'm getting what I deserve. People just can't get to that place of simple honesty. I've been in business, and I met people in business, and it's surprising how people fail in business. And when they fail in business, the one thing that they always seem to know is that it wasn't their fault. Well, it's the financial situation in the country at this time. If only this hadn't happened, if only that hadn't. And I worked for a company where I was selling, and I had to go out and sell. And I used to listen to people who'd come in who didn't sell. And they would give you the most ideal reasons as to why they couldn't do it. Well, you see, it's the budget just coming up, or it's the budget that's just been, or it's the budget that's about to be, or it's stock market, or it's this, or it's that. And they give you 101 reasons. Because the one thing they wouldn't face is the honest situation of saying, I'm a failure. And we as human beings, the one thing we won't admit is we fail. And the one thing we won't face with God is that we're failures. Now this man had got to the end of himself. He was going to die. I deserve it. How many of you are living in a situation where you won't really admit your need? I know some people in business, totally at their wits' end. The reason is they're failures. The problem is they just won't admit it.